In May of this year, a federal grand jury indicted former Speaker of the House John Dennis Hastert. The charges? That he had structured withdrawals of over $950,000 from various bank accounts to skirt bank reporting laws, and that he had lied to federal agents about these withdrawals. According to the indictment, the withdrawals were part of a bid to pay $3.5 million in blackmail to cover up past misconduct from his time as a high school teacher in Illinois. The story seemed perfect fodder for the tabloid corporate press. It featured a former high-ranking politician, blackmail and intrigue, and just enough details about Hastert's former life as a teacher and wrestling coach to suggest that the past misconduct referred to a salacious scandal of sexual abuse of a minor. But for some reason, the story faded from the headlines almost as quickly as it appeared. And now that Hastert's legal team has announced that they are seeking a plea deal with prosecutors in order to avoid a trial, it seems the story is likely to disappear completely. But a series of revelations from FBI whistleblowers reveal that this story is just the tip of a very seedy iceberg, one that implicates Hastert, his top aide, other Congress members, and government officials in a criminal network involved in sexual intrigue, foreign espionage, blackmail, and drug money. In 2002, Gilbert Graham, a special agent in the Washington field office of the FBI, blew the whistle on an illegal surveillance program being conducted out of the Bureau's Washington headquarters. According to the unclassified version of his complaint, obtained by the National Security Whistleblowers Coalition in 2007, Graham alleged violations of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act in conducting electronic surveillance as a subterfuge to acquire evidence of criminal activity. These allegations were backed up by a former FBI counterintelligence specialist in the Washington field office, who told the National Security Whistleblowers Coalition, "You are looking at covering up massive public corruption and espionage cases. To top that off, you have major violations of FISA by the FBI Washington field office and headquarters targeting these cases. Everyone involved has motive to cover up these reports and prevent investigation and public disclosure." According to FBI whistleblower Sibel Edmonds, revealing the details of this program for the first time in a series of podcasts in the wake of the Hastert revelations, this illegal surveillance program, dubbed COINTELPRO 2 by the agents who were asked to implement it, dates back to the mid-1990s, when the Clinton White House was being rocked by a series of sex scandals.
In mid-1990s, still bogged down with the Paula Jones scandal, a case that refused to quickly go away, while preparing for another sexual scandal, the Monica Lewinsky case, Bill Clinton and his top White House team put together a political retaliation plan meant to retaliate against and then neutralize the Republican Party and key elected Republican officials. The main objective of the plan was to 1. Collect major dirt on key Republican officials. 2. Use the information to blackmail those Republicans as a means to prevent impeachment. 3. Strategically release the cases of those who did not back down by blackmail if the impeachment process were to proceed.
The plan, implemented with the help of Clinton appointees Janet Reno and Louis Freeh, was remarkably effective. In December 1998, on the eve of the House debate on Clinton's impeachment hearings, Washington was rocked by House Speaker-elect Bob Livingston's sudden announcement of marital infidelity and resignation from the House. As the Chicago Tribune reported at the time, the Speaker-elect said those investigating him were trying to find indiscretions which may be exploitable against me and my party on the eve of the upcoming historic vote on impeachment. Livingston did not give details of any affairs and said he was admitting them only because he had learned that unnamed individuals had been working with news organizations. At the time, Larry Flynt claimed credit for forcing Livingston's resignation, saying that he had an audio tape of the congressman engaged in raunchy phone sex. This audio tape, according to Edmonds, came directly from the FBI's counterintelligence unit and the COINTELPRO 2 program. Livingston's resignation was only the latest in a string of high-profile Republican sex scandals that involved information leaked to the media by unnamed sources in the wake of the Lewinsky scandal. Representatives Henry Hyde, Helen Chenoweth, and Dan Burden's adulterous relationships were all outed in the run-up to impeachment, with Burden admitting to fathering a child out of wedlock. Livingston was replaced as Speaker by Dennis Hastert, a congressman no stranger to scandal himself. In 2005, Vanity Fair drew on FBI insiders, FEC filings, sworn testimony, and other documents to report on some of the information the Bureau dug up on Hastert. This included FBI wiretaps capturing Turkish agents boasting of tens of thousands of dollars in payments they had used to assure Hastert's flip-flop on the U.S. Congress's Armenian genocide resolution.
This is all nonsense. It's not being reported by the mainstream press because there's no factual evidence. The reporter does not have a transcript of any wiretap conversations that we know of. And even if we did, it's preposterous. The speaker does not have any connections to American Turkish interests.
Shortly after leaving the House in 2007, Hastert registered as a foreign agent lobbying on the Hill for the Turkish government. But the dirt on Hastert and his associates went much deeper than this.
Information on Hastert's nefarious and illegal sexual activities between 1996 and 2002 is far more explosive than the activities exposed in the recent so-called revelations. Hastert's sexual activities were videotaped and thoroughly recorded not only by 2 U.S. government agencies, but also by a foreign network, a criminal foreign network headquartered in Chicago and involved in NATO-CIA Gladio operations. Between 1996 and 2002, Dennis Hastert engaged in illegal fundraising activities in Illinois. These activities included receiving and laundering foreign-sourced cash funds, some of them drug money. Several other high-level elected officials were also involved in these illegal activities. Representative Dan Burton was a key figure, the mayor of Chicago, the governor of Illinois, and at least 3 high-level staff members were involved as well.
Hastert's nefarious and illegal sexual activities have been broached in media reports going back at least a decade, since the time that Hastert, as Speaker of the House, helped cover up the Mark Foley scandal involving the sexual abuse of male House pages. Not only has Hastert's sexual relationship with his live-in Chief of Staff Scott Palmer been repeatedly hinted at in articles by the likes of former U.S. Senate staffer Lawrence O'Donnell, but as far back as 2006, investigative reporter Wayne Madsen was tying the Foley scandal and Hastert into Tom DeLay, Jack Abramoff, Southeast Asia, and child sex prostitution. State Department sources have also reported that the visits of Hastert and other congressional leaders and staff members to certain Southeast Asian nations and the Northern Marianas should come under the scrutiny of the House Ethics Committee, now officially investigating Pagegate. The Northern Marianas became infamous in the scandals involving Tom DeLay and Jack Abramoff because of the presence in the U.S. slave labor territory of Asian children being used as prostitutes. Conveniently, Foley co-chaired the House Caucus on Missing and Exploited Children, which would have had authority to investigate charges of child prostitution in the Northern Marianas, Madsen reported, adding, Hastert visited Vietnam, along with Palmer, in April of this year, and spent 3 days in the country. Hastert, along with Illinois GOP Representative Ray LaHood, canceled a visit to Thailand and Vietnam in January 2006. Hastert was also in Thailand in January 2002. This lines up with the information that FBI insiders have been trying to blow the whistle on for years.
Since 1996, the FBI has had tons of information on Dennis Hastert, which was gathered in Chicago by the FBI's Chicago field office. The incriminating criminal evidence in those files range from bribery, extortion, fraud, money laundering, and embezzlement to sexual crimes against minors and participation in foreign-operated drug operations. Since 1997, the FBI has had much hard evidence on Dennis Hastert gathered by the FBI's Washington field office. The documented deeds range from espionage to foreign bribery. But that's not all. The FBI also has had hard data on Hastert's sexual violations outside the United States. The involved countries included Vietnam, Thailand, Turkey, and Morocco, among others. This also included sexual favors as means of foreign bribery. Interestingly, the CIA had been documenting those sexual activities outside the United States for many years, and not only on Hastert, but on many others, elected and appointed.
So why has this information never surfaced before? And why is one tiny sliver of information that might provide a window into this story emerging now, nearly a decade since Hastert left office and over a decade since the FBI wound up its surveillance operation? Realizing that the FBI's new dragnet was scooping up information on elected officials and political appointees across the board, not just presidential enemies, and with FBI agents increasingly outraged over the activities they were documenting, the White House, the DOJ, and the FBI sought a way to put a stop to the flow of embarrassing information. In 1999, the FBI COINTELPRO 2 program was transferred from the FBI's counterintelligence unit to the criminal unit, ostensibly to pursue prosecutions. But as the program had been founded on FISA violations, FBI agents were informed that the information couldn't be used in a courtroom. It was this attempt to sweep these cases under the rug that infuriated many of the lower-level agents and caused Gilbert Graham to file his complaint in 2002. But by then, it was already too late. The FBI's surveillance was messy and involved too many agents who could potentially blow the whistle. In the wake of 9/11, the internal surveillance program was shifted from the Bureau to the NSA, and it was not long before those surveillance powers were being directed against politicians and officials in yet another attempt to gather dirt and find blackmail-worthy material on these individuals. As NSA whistleblower Russell Tice told the Corbett Report in 2013, he had first-hand knowledge of this surveillance, which included politicians, judges, military personnel, and even the future president of the United States.
Yeah, it was journalists. It was members of Congress, both houses, Senate and the House, especially on the intelligence committees, in the armed services committees, and on judiciary committees, and as well as the senior leadership in both the House and the Senate. It was judges, federal judges, and every member of the Supreme Court, all 9, of which I held the initial targeting of Judge Alito in my hand when Judge Alito was being put up for his position on the Supreme Court. So I saw the Alito paperwork in my hand physically. It was members of a few members of Bush's own staff in the White House. Who else did they? They went after lots of lawyers and law firms, I noticed.
In your interview on Boiling Frogs Post, you mentioned specifically General Petraeus? Yes,
they went after senior military leaders. With my satellite stuff, I saw how they went after the State Department. They went after Colin Powell, Secretary of State. They went after General Saseki. And then on the terrestrial side, I saw the paperwork as they were going after General Petraeus.
Was Barack Obama targeted by this?
Yes, he was. As a matter of fact, that was in 2004, probably late summer time frame. And he was a candidate for senator. He'd already won his primary in Illinois, and that's when I saw, Barack Obama's name.
In short, this scandal is too deep, too dark, and covers too many people from both sides of the political aisle for it to ever proceed in public. If it were to be exposed, it would uncover a tale of surveillance, scandal, drug money, child prostitution, and blackmail that could blow up all over Washington and make Watergate look like a minor footnote in the history of political scandal. Knowing this, it comes as little surprise that Hastert's legal team, already having been granted 2 extensions to continue negotiating a plea deal with prosecutors, pushed back the deadline for pretrial motions to October 15th, when a trial date is expected to be set. All specifics about the case are being kept under seal since, as the AP reports, Judge Thomas Durkin agreed to a request by the U.S. Attorney's Office to keep materials secret, with prosecutors citing law enforcement and privacy interests. If these allegations of the FBI insiders of an illegal, White House-approved surveillance dragnet are true, And if the scandal does envelop several high-ranking politicians and appointed officials in both the Democrat and Republican parties, it is not difficult to imagine that Hastert's lawyers could graymail prosecutors, asking for evidence that the government could never turn over without opening up the whole scandal. And so we arrive at the present stalemate, where it looks increasingly likely that the case will be plea bargained away and further inquiry will be stopped before the case can be blown wide open. Given the deafening silence on the accusations around this deeper scandal from the media, the evident refusal of the Department of Justice to look into the complaints of Graham and other FBI whistleblowers, and, of course, the reluctance of the government to even acknowledge the claims, the task falls to everyday motivated citizens to raise awareness of this story and create the space for more insiders to come forward with their knowledge of these cases. In the meantime, stay tuned to BoilingFrogsPost.com for continuing coverage of the case, its history, and further revelations. This video is brought to you by the subscribers of BoilingFrogsPost.com. For more information on this and other topics, please go to BoilingFrogsPost.com. For more information and commentary from James Corbett, please go to CorbettReport.com. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. James Corbett here, CorbettReport.com, with your thought for the day October 16th, 2015, and hopefully you will have seen my recent eye-opener report on the real Hastert scandal, outlining how the former Speaker of the House, John Dennis Hastert, and other members of Congress and political appointees have been embroiled in drug money, money laundering, blackmail, and child rape, amongst other activities, exposing the real rot at the core of the political system itself, not something incidental to that system, but something that's been ingrained in part of it, into the heart of it through this blackmail system of control. Well, we have the latest update already on that story, and this comes from, many places. Here's NBC News. Ex-House Speaker Dennis Hastert will plead guilty in hush money case.
Dennis Hastert, the longest-serving Republican Speaker of the House in history, 1 second in line to the presidency, has agreed to cut a deal with federal prosecutors, pleading guilty to charges he paid hush money to cover up allegations of sexual abuse. The deal will bring an end to the sordid case and keep secret the details of what really happened. Tonight we have
Oh, that's right, a plea deal, which will keep all of the allegations, all of the charges under wraps so that no one will ever find out what happened. Wow, that's shocking, said nobody ever. And of course, it should come as no surprise, especially to people who watched the report and all of the saw all of the information in there, including, of course, the little nugget here about how all specifics about the case have been kept under seal and will continue to be now. As Judge Thomas Durkin agreed to a request by the U.S. Attorney's Office to keep materials secret, with prosecutors citing law enforcement and privacy interests. So there you have a perfect collusion between the prosecutors, the defendant, and the judge, all working together to keep all of the details of this case under wraps for the reasons that I outlined in this video report. But here's a little extra hint about the judge there and his relation to the case.
Well, what's next for Hastert depends on what happens with the judge today. Judge Thomas Durkin said he intends to disqualify himself because in the past he made contributions to Hastert's campaigns, and he also worked with Hastert's son at a law firm, but he gave both sides an opportunity to request he stay on.
Well, isn't that nice? So yes, contributed to Hastert's campaigns, worked with his son, conflict of interest start to finish, but he gave, both the defendants and the prosecutors, who both want the case kept under wraps, a chance to, allow him to disqualify himself, and they said no. So it all proceeded, and everything proceeded according to plan. The plea deal took place. We'll never know the details, or at least presumably we will never know the details, but of course some of them have been revealed over the years, and again, there's lots of footnotes here for people who are interested in digging into this case. For people who do want more details, for example, about Sibel Edmonds' story itself, I would, as always, highly recommend Classified Woman, which is the nonfiction story of what happened to her, and The Lone Gladio, which is the story of what's really going on behind the scenes in fictional form, of course. And for a limited time, the Kindle version of these books are greatly reduced. I think the Kindle version of Classified Woman is now $2.99. And the Kindle version of The Lone Gladio is $1.99. Obviously greatly reduced from usual sale price, so that you can hopefully get into this and find out more about this case. That's, of course, not going to be the end of our coverage here at the Corbett Report. We have more reporting on this to come, but I'll let you take a look at that when it drops next week. In the meantime, please do get The Lone Gladio, get Classified Woman. If you've read them before, reread them, get yourself familiar with this case as we go more in depth into what's really happening. Once again, James Corbett, CorbettReport.com.
From a lawyer. Denny Hastert is charged officially with breaking banking laws and lying to the FBI. Prosecutors say he agreed to pay somebody millions of dollars to cover up past misconduct, and we'll get to that. Court documents do not explain what that misconduct was exactly. But according to media reports, the former speaker was trying to cover up claims that he sexually molested a teenage boy back when Hastert was a high school wrestling coach in Illinois. That was decades ago. His lawyer's not saying whether Hastert would spend any time behind bars. They haven't told us yet. He's facing up to 10 years, but a plea deal would let him avoid a trial and potentially keep the details of whatever these allegations were quiet, officially. Let's bring in Mercedes Colwin. She's a Fox News legal analyst. The claim was relatively specific in the media from back when he was a wrestling coach in high school.
Exactly. But what a sweet deal that he's getting.
Oh, I don't know yet. How do we know?
The deal is, well, we don't know whether he's going to go into jail, but the deal is, listen, you're going to plead to this. He's not going to plead to whatever this misconduct one is. But so he may have these banking laws. That may be what he's going to plead guilty to. Or it may be the fact that he lied to the feds. It's a pretty sweet deal. Frankly, they're not going to talk about the misconduct or any of that. So this is the way they're going to seal it.
The charges, though we don't know what he's been convicted of, but the charges themselves were not about anything but the cover-up, as is so often the case, or the alleged cover-up.
Exactly right. What he's alleged to have done is actually withdraw less than $10,000 out of his bank account in intervals and then paying it to someone else. Once you actually withdraw more than $10,000, it triggers this regulation that banks have to then inform the authorities. There's this money exchange that's happening. There's more than $10,000.
Like at a casino or something.
Exactly right. So the fact that he actually withdrew $952,000, someone in the bank should have said, wait a minute. So just under $10,000.
$9,250, yeah.
Yes, but it's going over time and it keeps getting paid out. And ultimately, it was a huge amount of money that he was transferring to this alleged individual.
And those numbers are they point to that as the cover-up. They're like, he knew our laws, which anybody can know. Right. If it's under $10,000, you don't have to sign a thing that day. So he was trying to cover it up, and the reason he was covering it up was not about the taxes as much as it was about not letting him know where that money was going.
Exactly. And there's a source came forward, this sibling came forward and said, oh, my brother told, he died in 1995, but he said he was allegedly sexually assaulted by Hastert many, many, many years ago when he worked as a manager in his wrestling team.
Part of the law is that the charges are public. Once he pleads and the deal is signed, we'll know then what he's convicted of, right?
Exactly, but
not the details.
Not the details. So it may just be probably going to be this money laundering issue and the fact that he lied to the FBI, but we'll never know really what happened to this money that was being funneled to someone else.
Of course, the case has been coming up lately because it was a Speaker of the House. They remember Bob Livingston,
exactly,
who got caught in all kinds of bad stuff, and then they brought up Denny Hastert, and really nationally, nobody really knew who he was. Regular people who pay attention to politics didn't even know who he was. They made him Speaker of the House, and now all of this, and that's what they've been worried about this time around, like, who's got skeletons? You're the one congressman asking the question.
Exactly. And Hastert's this is a sweet deal for him ultimately because, frankly, you've got a dead witness, allegedly, if it's the same individual who died in 1995. This is decades ago. You don't have records and all of that that's going to actually and help the prosecutors actually bring it home and get a conviction. So that's why it's a sweet deal for him.
All right. Nice to talk to you, Mercedes.
Great to talk to you.
Now, General Jack Keane, retired four-star general, chair of the Institute for the Study of War, Fox News military analyst. It seems that this administration is disconnected from war reality, what's happening on the ground. Am I right or wrong?
Oh, yeah, absolutely right. From the very beginning in 2009, the emphasis has been withdrawing troops from war. It's never been a discussion about winning wars. Those wars are never used. They're never brought up in any conversation whatsoever. And that's what this is all about.
So let's look back in history. It appears that President Obama has never listened to the military minds with regard to the number of troops. October 2015, as we're just reporting now, he's going to leave 5,500, but the military is recommending leaving 9,800. February 2013, he went down to 34,000 troops, but it was recommended to keep 43,000. The surge in 2009 in Afghanistan recommended an additional 40,000 troops. The president decided always lower at 30,000 troops. Why?
Well, it's really quite extraordinary. And the other one was Iraq, 2011. We recommended 20-something thousand, wound up with nothing. The other one added to that is when the surge forces went into Afghanistan, General Petraeus wanted them to stay longer. The president, over his objection, pulled them out. It's unprecedented that he has never, ever accepted a force-level recommendation from his field commanders.
But why?
We don't have a frame of
Why
reference for
doesn't
that.
he do that?
I think there's always been a basic mistrust of the military and this sort of flippant attitude that the military is always going to want more than what they need.
Can anyone actually really know the conditions on the ground in Afghanistan 15 months from now to be able to say this is the exact number of troops and we're going to tell everyone that's the number of troops?
Most of our presidents who are commander-in-chief, for the very reason that you just discussed, they may not always agree overall with how big the campaign should be, but once the fighting starts, they clearly rely on their judgment as to what to take place because they are, as you say, on the ground and they have the facts.
All right, General Jack Keane, great analysis. Thank you.
Good talking to you.
All right, so you know what my wife and I did yesterday? We did what any normal couple does when they're not battling evil judges, evil U.S. attorneys, evil banking systems, evil mainstream media, infiltrators who embed themselves into the group and send out little planted emails trying to evoke a response and things like that. You know what my wife and I did? We went out to our garage, which we've been in this battle for over 5 months, so our garage had gotten pretty messy. We moved everything out, first of all. We moved everything out of the garage. We swept it. We organized things. We put things on shelves. We moved some things in the attic. And then we moved things in one by one and put things in their proper place. And now when you walk in our garage, it's a nice garage and there's empty spaces. And it's a wonderful feeling to have an organized garage. I'm just telling you, that's the kind of things you can get done when you don't have to spend all your time battling evil judges, bureaucrats, Bureau of Prison directors, people who lie and say, about things, just liars and deceivers. But this morning I wake up and all the evil injustices of the world just come rushing back into the picture. And I receive a phone call from a man in prison who I've never talked to before, and he knows about the Kent Hovind situation. And he went on for 30 minutes. I was not able to record it because I was having technical difficulties. I'm also having major network stability problems, by the way. But he talked about Franklin Delano Roosevelt, William Howard Taft, the Philippine Islands, Skull and Bones, congressional records, legislative courts, doctrine of hypothetical jurisdiction, the British Tories, Article 4, territorial power, Thompson versus Utah. He said he has all the congressional records to prove everything he's saying, and I couldn't record any of it, and it was all like, wow, I don't know what you're saying, buddy, but I tried my best to pay attention and to take notes. And he has 100 pages of critical information that absolutely has to get to Kent Hovind. So anyway, I'm sure the Bureau of Prisons and the evil side has a full recording because they record every phone call that comes from the Bureau of Prisons. And then also, I'm trying to set up a HomeWave account so that Paul Hansen can call because I'm told he has a statement he wants to make. And then also, I log on to the internet and I'm hearing about Dennis Hastert. And you guys see this right here? 5 questions from Hastert indictment. And what's Hastert indictment talking about? It's talking about how Dennis Hastert committed structuring and how evil structuring is. And we got Alex Jones talking about structuring and Glenn Beck talking about structuring, but nobody wants to mention the name Kent Hovind. Why doesn't anybody want to mention the name Kent Hovind? Maybe because if they mention that name, here's the deal. A long time ago when I was working as an engineer, right? I worked for an engineer for a Fortune 500 company, and we were doing technical things. And I worked with a man for nearly 8 years, and every morning we'd meet at 7 o'clock in the morning, we would begin our day, and we would work in the lab, and we would go through processes and procedures and upgrade firmware and go through technical processes. And as we go through technical processes, there's only one right way to do it. I mean, if you do it the wrong way, it simply doesn't work. So there's very little discussion about right and wrong, right? Because if you don't do it the right way in a technical environment, it doesn't work, right? But I remember after 8 years, and I got there early in the morning, and we were in the break room having our coffee, and the subject of the NDAA came up, and it was George Bush was president at the time, and he said, you know, we're in this war on terror, and we got to stop the war on terror, and we got to get the bad guys. And he made the comment, well, I don't say anything bad on my phone calls, so I don't care if they listen or not. What's it matter to me? And at the time, I didn't think much about what he said, but I just knew something was wrong with that, because it's not right to so easily give up our rights and let the government listen in on our phone calls, monitor our whereabouts, monitor our website visits, who we communicate with. I just knew there was something wrong with it, but it's like that seemed to be the prevailing attitude of everyone in the office. Well, if the government wants to listen in on our phone calls, we're not saying anything that we care to hide, so what's it matter? Well, let me tell you something. When the government is full of evil, wicked, reprobate, degenerate bastards, then you don't want them listening on your phone calls, because if you say anything that can be misconstrued, they'll use it against you, and they'll use it to take out their political adversaries. Now, you got to ask yourself, why is everyone talking about structure? And the IRS is coming out and apologizing for misapplying structuring laws. We got this guy who ran the mom and pop store, and they took over $100,000 of his money, and that was mainstream news. But nobody wants to talk about Ken Hovind. Well, anyway, I wake up this morning, and let me play you guys this video right here. We'll make it, hopefully this all the technical aspects. We're going to do a little redneck style. I'm just going to point a camera at the computer. Listen to this. Listen.
The former Speaker of the House, once second in line to the presidency, now facing federal charges. Accused of making false statements to the FBI and trying to hide large financial transactions that the government alleges was hush money. According to the indictment, Dennis Hastert agreed to pay $3.5 million to someone only identified as Individual A after meetings between the two 5 years ago. Payments meant to compensate for and conceal Hastert's, quote, prior misconduct. The indictment does not describe what that misconduct was, but does say Individual A knew Hastert most of Individual A's life and was a resident of the Illinois town where the former Speaker of the House was high school teacher and coach for years.
In consultation with the White House.
In December of last year, the FBI launched an investigation on the payments and whether Hastert was trying to avoid currency transaction reporting requirements, as well as using the cash to cover up past misconduct.
That's why they would be looking into this if there was a pattern of withdrawing around $10,000 from the bank without another explanation.
Hastert told FBI agents that the withdrawals were because he did not trust the bank system. The government alleges that was a false statement. It's a stunning turn for the former Republican leader who was House Speaker from 1999 until he stepped down in 2007. Since then, he's been a lobbyist at this Washington firm, which quickly removed Hastert's biography from its website after the indictment was announced.
Okay. Are you guys paying attention? Are you guys paying attention to what's going on? This whole video... hold on. Freaking commercials. Okay. So, are you guys paying attention to what's going on? Basically... they're saying Hastert was structuring. They don't give any other, any other evidence that he did anything wrong, and they're just trying to drive it home to mainstream people that structuring is wrong. We can't have people structuring and withdrawing their own money from their own bank, and we've got to expose these people. Isn't it amazing? Isn't it absolutely amazing that all of these people, Glenn Beck, CNN, Alex Jones, Fritz Springmeier, everybody's talking about structuring, but nobody wants to mention the name of Ken Hovind, who spent nearly 9 years in prison. Isn't it amazing? I just find it overwhelming that the IRS comes out and publicly apologizes for misapplying structuring laws. Nobody even wants to mention the name Ken Hovind, though. This Dennis Hastert guy is now going to, be brought up on trying to hide cash withdrawals or cash deposits or whatever they said he did, because it's around $10,000. That's an evil, evil thing, ain't it? I tell you what, guys. I tell you what, man. If you guys can't see what's going on, they're trying to set this up as a trial balloon in order to convince the public that they need structuring laws, right? Because Ken Hovind has been pushing that they repeal structuring laws, because it's none of their dang business how much we deposit and how much we withdraw from our own money in our own bank. But see, they're trying to set it up that they need structuring laws, so they come out with this false story. I don't even know if this story is real, or it's probably a false story because of the timing of it. It's just like when Osama bin Laden was killed right after the birth, Arpaio was fixing to release the birth certificate fraud evidence. Now they're coming out with this because Ken Hovind is about to make a big case that structuring laws should be repealed. But they got to say, oh no, we need it to catch these bad guys like Hastert. You guys don't see what's going on. It's so obvious to me. All the timing of this, right when Ken Hovind is about to get out and he's going to make a push that they need to repeal structuring laws, and now they got a story on CNN saying how good structuring laws is that it caught this bad guy. You guys don't see what's going on. I guess you guys just don't see it, do you? I hope all these wicked bastards burn in hell. I know that's not very Christian of me, but it's like if they don't repent for the evil that they're doing because they've been given time and time and time again to repent, I tell you what, I ain't going to shed one tear when God Almighty rains justice down on their sorry butts.